to fund and fill schools with life-saving equipment. But before we begin, I'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to talk about a tragedy in our schools this week. We've all know about it. We've all heard about it. I want to take a moment of silence for the tragedy in Nashville. Thank you. Now that is a separate discussion. Today we are here to talk about access to AEDs and training for life-saving skills like CPR. So we're going to hear from people whose lives were saved as a result of equipment and training. We're going to hear from loved ones of those who wish that their loved one had access to such training and devices. This is a bill that has support from both sides of the aisle, so we're going to hear from those who are supporting it. And first up is Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick, who introduced it this week.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It truly is a blessing to be here. Before we begin, I want to thank all of you for coming out today and joining us to talk about an important issue, not just to me as a member of Congress, but also as a mom. I want to thank Nancy Brown and the American Heart Association for helping organize this event and their efforts to protect our children from sudden cardiac arrest. We are grateful for your partnership. Thank you, Nancy. I will also want to thank Damar Hamlin, who has joined us today to talk about how this legislation will save lives. Thank you so much, Damar. Your dedication to this issue inspires me, and I'm so proud to introduce this bill with you. I also want to personally recognize the families and individuals whose lives have been touched by sudden cardiac arrest and who have worked closely with my office to tell their stories. Thank you so much for being here today. Your commitment to saving lives moves me, and we're all here today because of you and your story and your loved ones. Sudden cardiac arrest does not discriminate. It impacts nearly 600,000 Americans annually. Of children, they are impacted mostly by students who are athletes. We saw the fatal effects of sudden cardiac arrest in 2007 when 15-year-old Rafi McCroon, a happy, healthy boy, collapsed on a soccer field in Cocoa Beach, Florida. We saw it again in 2020 when Kentucky student Matthew Magine, only 16 years old, passed away on the soccer field. These tragic stories are heartbreaking and reminds us that the odds of surviving sudden cardiac arrest remains far too low when occurring outside the hospital setting, like in the classroom or on the basketball court. As a mom and a member of Congress, I'm on a mission to expand life-saving health care and tools for our children in every school. I'm proud to be joined by my colleagues, Congressman Bill Posey, Senator Cory Booker, and also Senator Chuck Schumer, in introducing the Access to AED Act. This bipartisan legislation will establish a grant program for elementary schools and secondary schools can use to buy and maintain AEDs and develop a cardiac emergency response plan. By boosting access to these life-saving tools, along with implementing proactive procedures and training schools and students can better be equipped to respond to sudden cardiac arrest when it's least expected and when time is of the essence. We see so many students who have cardiac arrest on the field, and the first instinct for everyone is panic. And the truth of the matter is because we're not having annual trainings. We're not having enough of AED machines at schools, at practices. And so our goal today is to make sure we are normalizing heart health and actually life-saving access to AEDs. And so it's an honor to be here and to be able to present this with our bipartisan support, because this is an American issue. If we can save another life, that's what this goal is. We want to make sure that all the tragedies that we've seen, they're not in vain. And I remember as a mom when I was watching the game with my husband, when I saw what happened to Damar, my kids are 19 and 20, my heart stopped. And I remember when my kids played sports. And I was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? I don't want another parent or another person to be in this room and feel the same way. We have to have the reassurance that there are trained professionals there at schools, that we have access, and let's not forget our students who already passed. Let these moments not be in vain, but let their legacy live on by all the kids we save. And so if next year there's one kid who's saved, once we pass this legislation, we did our due diligence and we lived up to this moment. So I thank everyone who's here with us, and I thank the bravery of everyone who's here to speak about their situations and what they've been through, especially losing their family members. And I really do thank our bipartisan support. There's many times we hear that Congress is divided, but the truth is, when it comes to our families and our children, we're on one accord. And that is the story that needs to be heard all around this world. So thank you so much for having us today, and I look forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you.
We mentioned how this has the support of both sides of the aisle, so up next is Congressman Bill Posey from Florida.
Well, I want to thank you, Congressman Cherfilus-McCormick, for your leadership on this important legislation, and thank each and every one of you today for attending and for your advocacy and your willingness to do whatever it takes to accomplish these goals. Help spread awareness about the leading cause of death in our nation's young athletes. There's a lot of ways that young people can die, and there's very few ways that we can actually get engaged to prevent those deaths. And this is one of those ways that we can get engaged and we can save lives, and we need to do that. My good friend, Congressman Al Lawson, former Congressman Al Lawson, worked really hard on this last session, and I'm so happy, Congresswoman, that you have taken up the reins now that he's no longer here to be the warrior that you've taken over, and I know you'll do well with it. Heart conditions are too often undetected. We all know that, and we find out too late that loved ones can be in danger, like Raf Macron, my constituent. And happy to have his father here with us today. Thank you. We tragically lost him, as was mentioned earlier during soccer practice in 2007, and that's when the issue first came to light for me. Schools should have access to AEDs, obviously, and they should know how to save them. That's how we're going to save lives like rats in the future. That's what this bill is about, and that's what I'm grateful to every one of you for supporting. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Up next, we have Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is very proudly representing New York and the Buffalo Bills.
Well, thank you, everybody, and it is really, I'm so honored and humbled in front of the families here to be here. I want to thank, of course, our great representatives, McCormick and Posey, for championing this life-saving legislation in the House, for Sheila Jackson-Lee for joining us today, and, of course, my dear friend, fellow Bills fan, Rep. Brian Higgins from Buffalo, New York, and Nancy Brown of the Heart Association as well. Now, of course, here today is Murphy Jensen and Damar Hamlin, who both suffered life-altering cardiac arrests and didn't just recover, but took the heroic route and made their recovery a mission to save others. I had the honor of meeting Lamar and his family, his beautiful parents, Nina and Mario, his brother, Damir, and Cameron and Dominic, his cousins, and we spent some time together. And what a beautiful family of 3 generations. And I was honored, actually, that Lamar gave me this jersey. That's why I'm wearing it. And true to the kindness of this man, the kindness and gentleness of this strong man, he wrote on the back, "Thank you for the love and support." Here, too, of course, is Matthew Mangine, who I met a few minutes ago. He's president of the Mangine Foundation, but more importantly, he's the father of Matthew Mangine, Jr. And the Mangine family went through the worst nightmare, as has been mentioned, I think, by Congressman Posey, that any family could go through when their son collapsed on the soccer field. And he told me that there were 5 AEDs or defibrillators there, but no one knew how to use them. And that's why it's so important in this bill we not only provide the equipment, but also the training, so people know how to use the equipment and it doesn't lie fallow sitting there. But I told Mr. Mangine, as a person of faith, that our Bible teaches us a lot. And one of the things it is, when something horrible befalls you, the human instinct is to turn inward into darkness and anger. And that's a natural human instinct. But to instead try to prevent what happening to you from befalling others, the Bible tells us is saint-like. It's lighting a candle. I want to salute Mr. Mangine. I want to salute all the other families here who have suffered that loss and know what that loss is like for lighting that candle. You are truly saint-like people. And when I say I'm humbled to be here, that's the reason. We should thank you all. And that's why today we're introducing legislation to make AEDs in schools and CPR training more available and accessible across the country. The people here with me today, Damar, Murphy, Matt, are the epitome of resilience, perseverance, and bravery, as I mentioned. They've dedicated themselves to making sure no child, no family, no community should go through what they did. For Damar, we all remember, the entire nation, really the entire world, joined together in somber prayer during this tumultuous time in our country. Damar's injury and recovery unified us all. He brought us together, and he's continuing to do just that. I hope you all get to meet him and you can see what both a gentle and strong man he is together, those two traits together in a beautiful human being. And we had we talked in our office. I showed him some of the things over there, including my grandson's 4-year-old mobile. But I think of my grandson when I think of this. He loves sports, and I think, what if it happened to him? And it just gets right to you. So I am thrilled to push for this bill. As Majority Leader, I pledge to all of you here, okay, to the Hamlin family and everybody else. Majority Leader, you got a little bit of clout around here, and I'm going to use that weight to bring my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on board and get this bill become a law and passed this year. On the President's desk. My dad, who passed away, taught me a few things. He just passed away about a year ago, but for those of you who are close to your parents, he's still here. And he said, when you're doing something important, look into your heart. Make sure it's the right thing to do. But then if you persist and persist and persist, God will reward you and you will succeed. Together we will persist and we will succeed. So, I'm very happy to be with you here today. The hope is that we never have to do this again after passing life-saving legislation. And as an avid Buffalo Bills guy, I worked hard to keep the Bills from moving out of Buffalo years ago, and they're still there. But as an avid Bills guy, I'd much rather see Damar in Orchard Park, New York, than here, and God willing, that's where he'll be next year. Thank you, everybody. Go Bills!
Thank you, Senator. Buffalo's getting a lot of love today. Up next, Congressman Mr. Higgins.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. I was given all this statistical information, and I'm just going to kind of set it aside. First of all, I want to thank my colleague, Sheila McCormick from Florida, for having the presence of mind to produce legislation that will gain access to these AEDs, which is a great, great gift. Also, Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, a friend of mine. She had an incident in her district, which motivated her to be here and join us as well. Matthew Mangine, you heard his story about his son and his commitment to helping with this issue as well. And as the representative in the United States Congress for Buffalo, I'm pleased to have Damar Hamlin and his family here. Chuck had kind of hit on this, and I think it's important. Buffalo, as Damar knows, had a year from hell. We lost 10 individuals, all African American, in a supermarket on Jefferson Avenue. They were shot by an individual that drove 200 miles. It was racially motivated, a white supremacist who now has, 10 life sentences. It hurt our community, but it brought it together as well. We had 2 snowstorms, and we had Damar Hamlin's injury, which left a huge impact on Buffalo. And the Greek 7th century tragic poets say that we suffer our way to wisdom. We suffer our way to wisdom. To live is to suffer, to endure the suffering, to transcend it is to give meaning to the suffering. And as Senator Schumer had said, 2 things happen when you're confronted with life-altering tragedy. You're either broken, you retreat into yourself, you become bitter, you become isolated, or you're broken open. You see your family differently. You see your country differently. You see your responsibility to your fellow human beings differently. Damar and Matthew, on behalf of his son, have been broken open. They're here in Washington to promote legislation to help people they will likely never meet and they will never know. But they're using what happened to them, because they have been broken open, to give a contribution to humanity, to our common fellowship to each other. It's a great gift, Damar. Matthew, it's a great gift. So today we give thanks for many things. To Matthew and Damar for the good work that they've done and the work that they will continue to do only for the people in the communities that they love. And finally, we give thanks to a good and generous nation. A good and generous nation that makes this day and all of our days possible. Thank you for including me.
Thank you, Congressman. Now joining us from Texas is Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, co-sponsor of the bill.
I might take a moment of personal privilege. This is the cherry blossoms voice. I've never had the impact of the cherry blossoms, so I want to know, Mr. Hamlin, I want you to know I have a booming voice, but I've been watching too many cherry blossoms as I've walked on the Capitol grounds. But I'm humbled to be here today, and I'm humbled because of my colleague, Sheila, because of the commitment that our majority leader has just made, Mr. Posey, our former Congressman Lawson, Higgins, who gave an important emotional statement of life, and of course Matthew. So let me try to be Shakespearean and a few words from Harriet Tubman. We watched you and your family, Damon, around the world, not just in the United States. And we watched you in the kind of spirited courage that defines this nation. It is that when we're knocked down, we get up. But we also saw the NFL's protocols, which were absolutely amazing, and the Buffalo Bills, to be within seconds to save a valuable life. To Matthew, who has taken his experience and loss to make a life story. I'm here today because we lost a little one who was only 11 years old, loving to play football and playing it in middle school. It is worth one statistic. Up to 80% of athletes who die suddenly had no symptoms or family history of heart disease. A simple defibrillator would provide that shock that would help to save that life. We are here today with the American Heart Association because we believe in life, and we believe in the greatness of our humanity and the courage of Americans. I too see a light in the House of Representatives. There must be 2 houses to pass a bill, and I can see a light brightening. Divided Congress we have, Republicans, majority Democrats in the Senate, and President Biden. As a member who's been here for 28 years and has been on a committee that oversees the NFL, the House Judiciary Committee, and one who encountered the issue of brain concussion some many years ago, I'm standing here today to salute your family with all of my heart, saw the parents' courage, to Matthew, and to say one thing to the American Heart Association. The spirit of our history connotes courageous moments in the darkest times of our life. This bill represents that bright light of courage in sometimes the darkest times of our life. And to Mr. Hamlin, who I will call you Mr. Hamlin, I want to make sure you know that history will write the story, that in times that you might have given up, as I watched you at the Super Bowl, as you gave voice to those who could not speak, you charged us to be part of that inevitable march to victory. I've been reading Harriet Tubman. She didn't play football, but she did say, I'll characterize it, if you hear bad news, as she was trying to free those from slavery, don't give up. Just keep on moving. This is legislation that allows us to keep on moving and to save lives. That is what America is all about. I'm with you. I want to save lives. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. As you all know, this is an event put on by the American Heart Association. So up next, we're going to hear from the CEO of the AHA, Nancy Brown.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here today on this incredible day and in this incredible moment. Let me start with my heartfelt thanks to Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick. Her work to prioritize heart health is extraordinary, and we couldn't be more thankful to be partnering with you and your incredible team. Thank you so much. We also thank Congressman Posey, Senate Democratic Leader Schumer, Congressman Higgins, and Congresswoman Jackson Lee from my home state of Texas, and all of the other congressional sponsors for your support today as we work to make this bill the law of the land. Other speakers have said, I'm going to put the statistics aside, but I'm not going to, because I think they're really important for you to understand. According to the most recent published scientific data, 90% of the 350,000 people who will suffer an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest this year will not survive. So putting that another way, only 1 in 10 people who suffer a cardiac arrest outside of the hospital will not survive. These victims will not even make it to the emergency room to have a fighting chance at life. This is wrong. This can be changed, and this legislation is an important step on the journey to make that a reality. When the world saw Damar's cardiac arrest on Monday Night Football, what they also saw were those very first links in the chain of survival working. Everything happened like it should in a cardiac emergency. Early recognition, calling 911, first responders administering high-quality CPR, access to and using a defibrillator, all of these things happening beautifully are the reason that the wonderful and amazing Damar Hamlin is here with us today. If everyone who suffered an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest like Damar's had that same opportunity to have those links in the chain of survival administered, think of the difference that would make in this world. And that is what this legislation will help us do. This is why, as the worldwide leader in resuscitation science, education, training, and advocacy, and as the official publisher of the guidelines for CPR, we are so honored to be here today and to put everything we have behind this legislation to make it the law of the land. We know that if cardiac arrest emergency response plans were in place, we could reduce deaths from cardiac arrest. We know that if all of the links in the chain of survival, and I'm going to say them again because you can't just pull one of these links out, all of these links are important and must happen. We must have people activate 911. You must begin CPR compressions. We must have an AED nearby and use it. And we have to make sure that persons who are transferred to healthcare systems get high quality healthcare in the healthcare system they're transferred to. That is the chain of survival, and it is what every American deserves to have happen. We know that Congressman McCormick's legislation will make sure that this happens. We are proud to partner with you, with the NFL, and so many others to bring this to life. We hope that all of you will take action as well. Here is my plug. You can text AED to 46839 to urge your lawmakers to join us in supporting this important bill. We have the commitment of amazing leaders of our two houses of Congress here, but voices matter. Every voice will make a difference in this legislation passing, and we really appreciate your support. I also want to thank the brave guests who are here today to tell their story, and we'll hear from them in just a moment. But I have to just say, as the CEO of the American Heart Association for many years, since 2008, among the saddest moments of my days are when I get the phone calls from parents who have lost a child, usually at a sporting event, because there was not, the chain of survival was not available. And the question always is, what can be done so that other families never experience what we have gone through? And I am here to tell you today that this bill is what can be done so that other families don't have to suffer the way that so many families have. And I'm telling you, it is family after family who try in their best way to help make changes in their communities. And as one of these fathers recently said in a piece that we published at the American Heart Association following Damar's event, he said, you know, since my son's tragic loss, we have tried everything we could to make people aware. And in one moment, America is now aware. And so when you think about something good coming from something tragic, that truly is the story of Damar Hamlin. And he is a gentleman who has given a voice to the voiceless. And he carries this not only in his heart, but truly as his purpose and his meaning in life. I remember the first time I met Damar, he said that to me, this is my calling. This comes from a higher place. This happened to me for a reason. And I'm so honored to get to introduce my dearest friend, Damar Hamlin, to all of you today. He is an incredible young man. He's a superior athlete, of course. He has a wonderful, beautiful family who loves him so much, and he loves them so much. And he has devoted his life to making sure that what happened to him, the positiveness of what happened, every step in the chain of survival being there, is afforded to every other person who suffers a cardiac arrest. Damar, will you please come forward and share your comments with people? I know we're all so excited to have you here.
How y'all doing? I'd like to thank Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick of the American Heart Association and Senator, love you, Senator, and everyone here today for a chance to talk about protecting kids from sudden cardiac arrest. There are so many people here to thank, but I really can't speak without first taking a moment to acknowledge several families who are here today that lost a child due to sudden cardiac arrest. I'm humbled beyond words to be here to support each of you and the work that you have been doing to save lives, and I'm grateful to be here for all of that you are doing. I'm here today with a few kids from Pittsburgh who represent what this work is all about. My brother Damar, who's 8, my cousin Cameron Dorsey, who's 10, and my cousin Dominic, who's 11. To me, these kids represent why we are all here today. As I was growing up playing football, I don't recall ever thinking about CPR or knowing where an AED was in my school or on the athletic field. But for those of you with children who play sports, I'd imagine your experience was similar. With my coaches on the field and my family in the stands, we didn't plan what would happen if sudden cardiac arrest should happen to me or one of my teammates. On January 2nd, that all changed for me and my entire family, particularly my mom, Nina, and my dad, Mario, who are here with me today. Thankfully, the medical team with the Buffalo Bills was prepared, and they saved my life. Today, we are so humbled and inspired by what I feel is an opportunity that God has given me to help and protect young people based on what I experienced. So here are some facts that I feel that need to matter to all of us. Sudden cardiac arrest happens to more than 7,000 kids under the age of 18 every year in our country. 7,000 kids every year. The majority of the kids impacted are student athletes. And research shows that 1 in every 300 youth has an undetected heart condition that puts them at risk. For schools that have AEDs, the survival rate for the children from sudden cardiac arrest is 7 times higher. The Access to AEDs Act will help ensure that schools are just as prepared and trained to respond in a time of crisis as those on the sideline of an NFL game. And it will also support the purchase of AEDs for schools and help create cardiac emergency response plans. Combined, these efforts will help protect kids and reduce deaths in schools across the country. So today, I thank each of you for focusing on the idea that every kid should have the same access to a life-saving emergency response that I did, should they need it. Around the world, people have come together to focus on this need, and I'm amazed and encouraged by what we can do together. Thank you all.
Damar, I think I speak for everyone in the room, everyone watching. It is so good to see you and to hear you. We love a story of survival, and we have another one for you. Former Grand Slam tennis champion. I'm going to let him tell you his story if you haven't heard it already. I introduce Murphy Jensen.
Hi, everybody. You know, Damar, it's great to see your face. I've gotten to know your mom and dad. It's very humbling to be here today in front of all of you. And I'm going to start with an Arthur Ashe quote. I'm a tennis player. And Arthur Ashe was one of the first partners with the American Heart Association after he survived a heart attack on a tennis court. He says, true heroism is remarkably sober. True heroism is not the urge to surpass others at whatever cost. True heroism is the urge to serve others at whatever cost. I wrote notes. If anybody knew the Jensen brothers, we were wild cards from northern Michigan that won a little tennis tournament called the French Open. I want to thank Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick for having me here today. I want to thank Nancy Brown and the AHA for having me here today. I'm someone in long-term recovery from mental health challenges and substance use disorder. In my first life, I was a professional tennis player and French Open champion with my brother Luke. The greatest victory of my life has been my recovery from mental illness and SUD. That was a fact until October 29th, 2021, the night before my 53rd birthday. That night, I had a cardiac arrest while playing an exhibition tennis match in Colorado Springs. My heart stopped while serving a tennis ball. I fell back and landed on my head and had skull fractures. My heart stopped for 18 minutes. Within 10 seconds, the people in attendance rushed to my aid, started CPR and chest compressions. The next thing that was said is, "Where's the AED?" My brother Luke ran to get it. They shocked me 4 times on that court and 2 more times in the ambulance. While laying flat on the court, my brother was talking to me. He was screaming, "Jensen's never quit. This is not your time. Kate needs you. Duke and Billy need you. I need you." When I got to the hospital, I was medically induced into a coma for 6 days. The tennis world would pray for me. My wife and family and loved ones, it seemed like everybody was praying for me. When I woke up, my wife Kate tried to explain to me that I was in the ICU. I had had a cardiac arrest and that I was alive. Miracle Murphy was what the world started calling me while recovering and since the cardiac arrest. When I returned home to Seattle, my first visit was with my therapist. And I asked this therapist, Cecile, "Why am I still here?" This is what I've learned. I've learned I'm still here because there is an AED 10 feet from that tennis court I was playing on. I'm still here because people in attendance knew how to use an AED, and they knew they could use it. They didn't have to wait. I'm here because people in attendance were certified in CPR and chest compressions. The AED Act, ladies and gentlemen, is a game changer for everybody on this planet. The AED Act is something that will change the world for someone. The work of Nancy Brown, the AHA, the Cooter Jensen Foundation changed the world for me and my family. What I've learned is that heart health matters. Mental health matters. Together, they're a powerful force. Here are the questions that every day someone asks me. And if you're a cardiac arrest survivor, you might relate. What caused your cardiac arrest? What caused your cardiac? Was it high altitude, low potassium? Was it dehydration? The better question to really ask is, what saved your life, Murphy? What saved your life, Damar? What saved your life? The answer is 3 letters, AED. Automated external defibrillator. I had to write that down. Automated external defibrillator. And today I have an automated internal? Implanted. Thank you so much. Defibrillator. And man, the other question I found out was, or was asked, was what was it like on the other side? Well, Congresswoman, everybody, I am on the other side right now, right here with you. The last year and a half has been my other side. Overcoming my mental health challenges and now escaping sudden cardiac death, without question, are the 2 greatest gifts and blessings of my life. I've learned to live every day like it's my last since October 29th. My rebirth day is November 4th. Everything counts. Healthy heart function is a gift. The AED Act is a gift and a blessing beyond measure. I'll never be able to repay the debt of love and unselfish acts of kindness and life-saving action that was given to me on October 29th and every day since. What I can do is that when anywhere, anyone, anytime reaches their hand out for help, I am there. I'm going to tell you something personal. The most important things in my life are my wife, Kate, my brother, Luke, and my two boys, Billy, Duke, and my family, and all my friends, and everybody in this room. They've all carried me. If it wasn't for the people near the court that day, I would not be here. Everyone close to me had their own experience of the trauma associated with a cardiac arrest. My hope is that from this day moving forward, it won't take a miracle for someone to survive cardiac arrest. In my house, we live by a principle called our common welfare should come first. And it is my dream that because of Damar's story, Matthew's experience and story, and other surviving stories, the actions of the AED Act and the work of the AHA, that saving lives and preparedness and education is the norm, because policies are in place that make the world we live in safer and access to care more available. You know, every day is Heart Health Day for me. We only have one heart. If there is a message I want to take home with you and to never forget, is this: love wins. This has been my experience. And the AED Act is an act of love. And if nobody's told you they love you today, I do. And there's nothing you can do about it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, my man.
Thank you, Murphy. I know it wasn't easy to share that, so thank you for your bravery. Now, we've heard stories of survival and survivors. Thanks to quick thinking, thanks to training, and access to devices that allowed them to act. But not everyone is so lucky. Coming here to talk to us about turning pain into action is Matthew Mangine Sr., president of the Matthew Mangine Jr. Foundation.
Sorry, I just need a second to get set up here. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick, Congressman Posey, Senator Schumer, Senator Booker, Representative Higgins, Representative Jackson Lee, and Nancy Brown, thank you for having me here today. As some of you know, our son Matthew collapsed June 16th of 2020 from sudden cardiac arrest at soccer practice in northern Kentucky, just 6 miles from the stadium in Cincinnati where Damar collapsed. There were 5 AEDs on campus, yet no one retrieved an AED to apply to Matthew due to a lack of proper training and because the coach was never given an emergency action plan, nor was told where the nearest AED was, which was 250 feet away. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. We lost our beautiful firstborn son. To all distinguished guests and sponsors of this bill, thank you. What you are doing here today will save countless lives. But to you, Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick, when Kim and I learned that the story of our son helped move you to take action, all I can say is you have touched our hearts, and the entire Mangine family is so grateful to you for the work you've done. I tried not to get too statisticky in these things because you already hear a lot, and somehow I get stuck at the end. So the biggest thing that I like as a takeaway is just think of this. 1 high school student dies every 3 days in the United States. It's pretty easy to remember, and it's a sad statistic that we live with today. I also want to tell you how joyous I am to see you here tomorrow. That night was very difficult for my wife and I because of what we've gone through. All I could think about was your parents. because I knew what they were going through that evening. Thank God that you were in, as ESPN reported, the best possible out of hospital place to have a sudden cardiac arrest. What the care that you had, we're hoping we can get throughout the entire community of youth sports at some point in the future. Kim and I started the Matthew Mangine Foundation in honor of our son for these reasons. Well, we're not just trying to provide AEDs to schools. Our goal is education. Education is the key. What we saw on Monday Night Football was muscle memory. We saw everybody jump into action. We saw them do what they needed to do to save a life. That's what we need to teach our coaches, and that's what we need to teach our young people. If we start out young at these boys' age, think about where they're going to be when they're as old as, some of us in this room. Through this bill, you've taken the torch to a higher level towards a goal of teaching CPR and AED use in every school so that other parents don't have to endure what Kim and I went through. You are keeping Matthew's legacy alive, and Kim and I are so honored to be invited here with you today. And stop. That was 3 minutes that it took me to take just to deliver these words. When you suffer a cardiac arrest, if you can get an AED on within the first 3 minutes of just what I was talking, that person's chance of survival is 89.9%. Okay, so now we're starting to get into the gray area of too late. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for also sharing your story with us. I know that was not easy to talk about. Our final speaker, we've been talking a lot about sports. We have the worlds of tennis, football, soccer represented. We have Brendan Plack, the NFL Senior Vice President of Public Policy, here with remarks from the NFL. Brendan, thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Well, it's very difficult to follow, you guys. Thank you, Murphy and Matthew, and a special thanks to Damar for sharing your stories, and all the families here have been impacted by sudden cardiac arrest. Thank you for being here. And Damar, Murphy, Matthew, thank you for using the time that the good Lord's given you to make positive impact on other people's lives. Your work and the Congresswoman's work is going to save countless lives going forward. We want to thank Congressman Cherfilus-McCormick and Congressman Sheila Jackson-Lee for supporting the Access to AED Act. The NFL is proud to support the Access to AED Act. We look forward to working with you to get this signed into law soon. Before turning it over to a special video message from Commissioner Roger Goodell, I just wanted to mention that in addition to supporting this legislation, the NFL launched this week with the American Heart Association, the Red Cross, Damar's Chasing M's Foundation, the NCAA, and several major professional sports leagues, a new coalition to launch a 50-state advocacy campaign that makes sure these life-saving procedures are in place in schools across the country. That is access to AEDs, CPR education for coaches, and emergency action plans. It complements the Access to AED Act very well, Congresswoman. So thank you for your support for this. The league also announced this week that we've committed more than $1 million in grants to support nationwide CPR education and AED access in schools across the country. The message from today's event is very clear. The resources and the education and the training that saved Damar's life and Murphy's life should be available in every school across the country, and we're happy to do our part. Also, that funding includes a new partnership with the American Heart Association, the American Red Cross, to promote hands-only CPR education across the country. So thank you with that. With that, I think we have a short video from Commissioner Roger Goodell.
On behalf of the National Football League, we are proud to join Damar Hamlin and a broad coalition of sports leagues and health advocacy groups in support of the Access to AEDs Act. I'd like to personally thank Representative Cherfilus-McCormick, Representative Bill Posey, and all the co-sponsors of this bill, which provides resources for schools across the country to purchase AEDs and expand CPR training. I'd also like to thank Damar for his advocacy and leadership in this life-saving effort. Damar's recovery is an inspiration to all of us. As he continues his recovery, the NFL has launched a philanthropic effort and formed a coalition of sports leagues and health advocacy groups to start a 50-state campaign to ensure all high schools have access to AEDs. Coaches receive CPR education, and emergency action plans are in place to respond to sudden cardiac arrest. These measures help save Damar's life, and no doubt will save countless lives of young athletes in the future. Thank you again to the members who are supporting the Access to AEDs Act, and we look forward to getting this bill signed into law as soon as possible.
Thank you both Brenton and Roger from afar. And now to wrap up here, we're going to have a demonstration. We have Tom Mazzotti from the American Heart Association who is going to demonstrate on this table right here what an example of CPR instruction would look like and training. Tom, I give it to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. I get to show you the first 3 vital links in that chain of survival. So when someone suffers a cardiac arrest, the first thing you want to do is give a good tap and shout. If you do not get a response, have someone call 911, have someone get the AED and bring it back. So we're going to show you how to do CPR compressions, and we're going to show you how to use an AED. Tap and shout, you call 911, you get the AED, and then immediately begin compressions. You're going to locate the center of the chest, straight across the nipple line, and you'll take the heel of one hand, lock in your fingers with the other, place that heel right in the center of the chest, and with your arms straight and locked at the elbows, you're going to push down with your shoulders. You'll compress at a 2-inch depth, and at the rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute, about that speed. We'll continue to do that until someone shows up with an AED, okay? It's important that we continue doing this 2-inch depth at 100 to 120 compressions per minute because you want to keep blood flowing, which will carry oxygen to the brain, keep the brain and other vital organs alive. So as soon as the AED shows up, very simple to use. We ask you to do one thing, and that is turn it on and follow the prompts, okay?
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pad connector next to flashing light.
Take out the pads, apply them to bare chest. When you're doing hands-only CPR, you can do that.
Plug in connector.
You can do CPR over clothing, but the pads go on bare chest. Plug-in pads connector, there's a flashing light up there.
Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient. Shock advised. Charging. Stay clear of patient. Deliver shock now. Press the orange button
The
now.
flashing button right down there.
Shock delivered. Begin CPR.
Then you go back into doing your compressions. 2-inch depth, 100 to 120 compressions per minute. And you can see the pad placements. One lower left, one upper right. Okay? And that's so that when the AED administers a shock, it crosses the heart line and gives the shock. All the AED pads have diagrams on them, so you know exactly where to place them. So it's that simple. Turn on the AED and follow the prompts. There's lots of different AEDs out there, lots of different manufacturers. But once you turn that on, they all standardize on the same prompts, okay? Then you leave the pads on, and you continue with your compressions, and in about 2 minutes, the AED will go through the same process again. It'll say analyzing heart rhythm, and if the victim needs another shot, it will administer another shot. So very simple. Once again, straight across the nipple line, heel of one hand, lock in your fingers, center of the chest, and with your elbow straight and locked, push down with your shoulders. Ideally, you would want that victim to be on a hard surface, typically the floor. So if you're at home, and someone's on a couch or chair, and you're able to remove them and get them on the floor, do that. It's always better to have them on a hard surface. You'll do those compressions until the AED shows up, and then you can follow the prompts. And hopefully you'll have this going on for several blood and helping that victim survive. Just by doing that, by pushing hard and fast in the center of the chest and using the AED when it shows up, just by doing that, you will double or triple that person's chance of survival. Think about that for a minute. What I just showed you, 30 seconds, can double or triple that person's chance of survival. We're going to have some other mannequins set up at the end of the session here, and welcome everyone to come up and practice some compressions, especially you guys here up front. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Tom, for demonstrating. Thank you, all of you, for being here to the Access to AEDs Act briefing. And most importantly, thank you to our speakers for sharing their stories that required a lot of bravery. So thank you all. Before we conclude, we're going to have a photo up here. I've been asked to allow just a quick moment for that. And then